I'm Rima Laibow. I'm the Medical Director of the Natural Solutions Foundation, and I'm talking to you today from Geneva, Switzerland, where General Stubblebine and I have been covering the Codex Alimentarius Commission meeting. Now, Codex Alimentarius, as you know, is the United Nations Commission that sets standards and guidelines covering everything that goes into your mouth, with the exception of drugs, that moves in international trade. Most countries in the world adopt the Codex standards and guidelines because it's the easiest thing to do, and because they mistakenly believe that the United States has the best food security, the best food safety, and the best food science in the world. We, of course, know that that's nonsense. However, Codex acts as if that were true, and the United States is the strongest force here. As I observe Codex, and I've been to a number of different commission meetings and committee meetings now, as I observe Codex, what I see is that this large international commission is fraying. It's ready to fall apart. It doesn't have enough money to conduct its activities because it has made itself so complex and so diversified in its minute management of food that it's run out of money. FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and WHO, the World Health Organization, fund Codex. WHO has not been increasing its funding to any significant degree, and so FAO has to pick up the pieces and is now funding 85% of the Codex Commission. That means, for instance, that the Executive Committee, which meets in secret twice a year, doesn't have enough money to meet this coming December. That's good news for us. Codex is also fraying and coming apart at the seams because the developing world, and even some countries that were firmly in the entourage of the United States, firmly quacking along like baby ducklings every time Mama US said anything, set any standard or proposed any guideline. Countries like Brazil are breaking away. And in fact, at this Codex meeting, Brazil said, wait a minute. This is totally illegitimate as an international process for standard setting because the developing countries can't afford to come to every meeting. And if they don't come to every meeting, said Brazil, then there's no legitimacy to the standards that are set. The chairperson smirked and derided what was being said and closed the discussion. Then he called lunch break. When the meeting resumed, Brazil was, by the sound of his voice, of course we can't see his face because we've been relegated to a third balcony where there's no visibility of the proceedings. We can only hear them through headphones. Brazil sounded livid, and he said, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Secretary, I do not appreciate having the Secretariat smirk and snicker through the contributions of the delegation of Brazil when I talk about legitimacy. I am not happy with this. I would expect more respect from the Commission. Well, that kind of thing only happens when the strains, the internal strains of a system are beginning to pull it apart, and change is possible. You see, as the rigidity of Codex begins to become flexible under the stress of not enough money, ridiculous standards and guidelines, impossible requirements, expensive requirements that more and more countries cannot meet, as these tensions begin to mount, that's our opportunity. Now we can come in even more effectively, and we can go to the countries that are suffering the most under the burdens of Codex, and we can say, hey, the whole thing is illegitimate, as the delegation of Brazil said, and you don't have to follow those guidelines and standards anyway. There's a moment of opportunity here that is very, very important in protecting our food supply in the United States, because the FDA is driving Codex home here in the U.S. Everything that Codex agrees to, they bring home, and they say, well, it may violate U.S. law, but we've got to do it, because otherwise we'll be in violation of the Codex standards and guidelines, which are mandatory, but which are enforced through trade sanctions of the World Trade Organization. And that, of course, is a distortion. We know better than that. We know that countries have options, and the U.S. has options too. So while Codex is in the process of developing enough tension and enough lack of reasonable legitimacy, we can move in and become even more vigorous in talking to both the people who make U.S. policy and more productively to the rest of the world, so that the Codex system breaks down. That's our goal, to break it down, and then, if we can, to build it up into a pro-health force. That's what the Natural Solutions Foundation has taken a leadership role in doing. And I want to thank you for sending us here and making it possible for us to see what and how we can do to save food for us and for the rest of the world. Thanks. I'll give you a wrap-up report tomorrow when the Codex Commission finishes its business.